I'm Mary Portas, known to many as Mary Queen of Shops, but in my day job, I'm a businesswoman who runs a brand consultancy and communications agency. And I'm fascinated by business. I have one, and I travel the country meeting and advising them. And running your own business can be tough, with often limited access to support and guidance. So, because of this, over the next 5 weeks, I'll be interviewing some of the best people in British businesses, getting up to the moment insights and tips. Look at all these facts. Half of all SMEs were hit by a cyber attack last year, costing them on average £25,000. Worldwide, cybercrime costs are over $3.5 billion a year, and that's expected to quadruple over the next year. And still, today, 90% of businesses have no cybersecurity management plan. I mean, that's a worry. That gives me kind of palpitations reading it. What's your thoughts on that? Well, you know these figures.
Yeah, I think, I do know them, so I hear them quite a lot, and I think it's not changing. The problem's only going to get bigger. I think, companies whatever size, and that's the thing, I think sometimes small companies feel, oh, we're less than 100 employees, we're not going to get hit, but we know that, 50%, as you say, have had a cyber breach. I think it's just being responsible about security and making it a priority. It used to be, people used to say, oh, it's on the agenda, but it always tends to slip off. And now it just can't. It's ever evolving.
And you're saying it's going to get worse. What about you, Tim? Are you worried too?
I think it's tip of the iceberg at the moment. I really do. I think it's a new cost of doing business, and I think there's a lot of confusion and fear. Naturally, generally from businesses, people associate cybersecurity with technology, but actually there are some very basic things that can be done to just make sure that organisations are safer all round.
And if you're a small business, we're talking £25,000, it's cost a relatively small business. I mean,
that's
a lot of money.
It put you out of business,
yes.
And it often does. I mean, one of the scariest statistics, as well as half of them being attacked, more than half of them actually close down.
Yeah.
Because once they've been attacked, they're a target, and they get attacked 3-4 times over. And I think it's shocking because they're the backbone of our economy.
They are indeed. And if you've got a cybersecurity question, get in touch using our hashtag SpotlightSessions. So Carmina, right at this moment though, I know the future doesn't sound too great, but right at this moment, what do businesses need to worry about?
I think I'd say if they've generally got a plan, they need to understand their sort of security maturity, whatever size. I think they need to worry about that they are a possible, they are a possible threat. They could be attacked at any time.
It just has to be
on their agenda, their board's agenda. It needs to be made a priority.
Right, so Kieran, listen, you want to sort of debunk some of the jargon around it. And when you start reading it, what have we got? We've got phishing, vishing, whaling. I mean, how do you make this understandable?
By putting it into lay terms and looking at it all together. I use everybody talks about technology, people and processes. What you've described is the technology, but it's actually the people are the ones who are using the technology. You've got to look after the human element as well, and you've just got to accept that you're going to get attacked. So the protection and the processes are there. There's the prevention, and then there's also the protection as well.
So you've got a company called ProtectBox.
Yes.
What does it do?
So it's helping you to buy the technology, people and processes in an hour. So you can go from logging on, registering, filling out a questionnaire literally in about half an hour to an hour. And it's not technical at all. We've made it very, very simple.
Which is going to be helpful because let's face it, I'm reading some of the facts that you gave as well, that 3/4 of most cyber attacks are down to human error. And we're humans. We're hoping that we're going to be the future of business. It's not all going to be digital. So, how do we combat that? What's the sort of things that we should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some very basic things that we can put in place. Some of the best things that we can do are we can use strong passwords. We can make sure that we don't use the same password
That's so difficult though. I can't cannot tell you. I cannot tell you how to do it. I've got about 15. I can't do it. I'm getting older. My brain's going, I've got too much in my head to worry about 15 passwords.
And I think actually that brings us on to something, which is the third point, that technology is an enabler to create an amazing user experience to ensure security in businesses. And that's at Tessie, that's exactly what we're doing. We're using technology to try and secure businesses in a way that doesn't create burden for people.
Yes, but what do you do with it via emails? Because I've been reading a lot of facts that so much of this is by human error via emails, which is what we mostly do every day.
Yeah, so what's really surprising is that we've even spoken about it on the panel today, is about attacks, right? And actually one of the most common data security incidents reported to the UK regulator is just a simple misdirected email. So that's sending highly sensitive information to the wrong person purely by accident.
And then you use AI technology, do you?
That's exactly right. So what we're doing we are analysing enterprise email networks. So we analyse historical email data, understand the conventional ways that people communicate and what kinds of information they communicate. And then when somebody looks like they're sending something to the wrong person in error, we catch that just before it's sent and we alert them with a pop-up warning.
So is that something we're going to see? Are we going to see much more AI involved in cybersecurity?
I think it has a really important role to play. So we're a machine learning company. But what we actually try and do is make the technology disappear into the background. And machine learning is a great way to automate security into organizations. And the previous method of doing this was using a system of rules or policies that you had to put in place and someone had to maintain them. And I think AI has a really important and interesting role to play, just enabling businesses, especially small businesses that don't have security teams.
I'd add as well that I think the market's got so big, there is no way humans can keep on top of it. So that's really what the AI and the machine learning is doing.
There's a massive
and that's what we're trying to do with Protect Box as well, is actually just pull all of that together so that humans are actually there to do the decision making. We're putting that information in
when big businesses, like the NHS, the WannaCry, had that huge... I mean, what can businesses do? What are the hygiene factors they should be putting in place now?
I think
to stop that.
Yeah, I think it's having somebody within the company who takes responsibility for security. A head of security or something that's able to also, talk to a board at security level. It's not.
Does that have to be senior? Because we were talking about that. We all will need someone in the business who's responsible for this, don't we? I mean, does that have to be a senior player? And what happens if you can't afford someone at a senior level?
Well, I think it does depend on the size of the business. But we've talked earlier. I think it's making everybody in the company aware of the threats of security. You have to be careful. People clicking on links. We all have it on our personal emails. You get these links that you should never click on. And I think it's having somebody that's responsible, but making sure everybody within the company are on board and understands, the set security policies.
So when they come into the company, this is how we work, and that should be an absolutely vital point on it.
But it's constant as well. You do things like, phishing attacks on your own employees, or just having some standard security policies of do's and don'ts, whether it's no USB policies here, nobody clicks on a link, just having some basic standard policies. Employee awareness is critical.
And like so many businesses, in fact, I would say most businesses have digital as part of it, don't they? And and getting insurance is complicated though, isn't it? I mean, we were talking about this earlier as well, but what is out there? What's the simplest way? Far today, and I bet it's changing all the time.
It's a really hard question to answer because, and again, we had a conversation on this before, I think it's generally checking with your insurance company what they do offer. I think there's a whole range out there, but again, because the threats are constantly evolving, it's quite hard for an insurance company to quantify what that risk is. So I think the first point of call is understanding what you have in place today with your insurance company.
And of course, if I'm a little cafe down in Cornwall, which could be quite possible, or your Deliveroo, how do you know you're getting the right package or what the insurance should be?
I think that's
use Protect Box.
There we go.
So that's what
you to get it in.
There we are. We use Protect Box.
I think
it's making that accountability. It's making sure that people aren't scared to own that decision, but also not scared to be able to say something's gone wrong, and we're all looking at this together.
Because I was thinking about this, when businesses even come to you and you're doing business with another business, how important is cybersecurity going to be to that? I mean, surely we all get credit ratings, don't we, when we're getting clients or business coming to us. isn't this going to be part of it going forward, that they will be asking how secure your business is?
It's another risk that it's the core risk now
Yeah.
that overlaps all of the other risks
Yeah.
that the board is managing. So you have to look at it, like you say, like it's a credit score.
And we talked
It's an
about
assessment.
third parties earlier, having your third party suppliers, what's their risk,
Yes.
Yeah.
posture?
Of course.
And we've seen some big breaches, in the public domain, big retailers in the US, where that was a third party, somebody clicked on the link that was sent to them. So again, it's that ever-evolving circle of...
It just goes on,
it
doesn't
does,
it?
exactly
And also
that.
It's like a
Because-
domino effect. But
Yes.
also, what about the government? They did a £300 cyber securities, wasn't it? You're smiling at me, was it? No.
It was amazing because
Oh,
I
was it?
promoted it.
Oh, did you do it?
I worked when I was
Oh,
working in
okay.
Cabinet Office
So
and
to
Foreign
tell
Office.
us about that, because some businesses might not even have that or applied for that.
It's a fantastic scheme. It's essentially a checklist. It's a sort of all-in-one box that a company can download.
Yeah.
They could do it themselves, and you don't have to be technical to do it. You can pull in all members of your team to do it as well. Again, another thing we're looking at in Protect Box is actually giving delegate access,
Yeah.
so that you can make it easy for the entire organisation to work together. And Cyber Essentials is one of those.
Great.
And I would say using something like Cyber Essentials alongside having the insurance policy as well, it's that whole, it's the two things in combination that are actually going to keep you protected.
And what about you bring your own device, a BOIOD? I mean, you employ millions of people in your business. So how do you manage that? Well, how do you manage that? I mean, the first thing anybody comes in, what's the password? How do I get onto your Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I think whether it's, Accenture or anybody else, whatever size, I think, emerging technologies now, bring your own device, Internet of Things.
And do you allow them to use their personal devices when they come into work?
Yeah, we have our own sort of standard policies in place. I mean, we take security very seriously. Employee awareness is top of the agenda. So,
But if you're a small business, like most businesses wouldn't have the infrastructure or the cost to be able to say, here we are, we're going to digitally cover everything for you.
I think
What
again,
would they
and
do?
Tim mentioned it, it's about the people, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's not just the device. It's,
I mean, so really what we're seeing at Tessian is that we say that humans are the perimeter of the organisation. And actually, if you're trying to get into an organisation, if you're trying to hack the organisation or get money out, you don't hack the device necessarily, you're hacking the human. And human hacking normally takes place from, it's an email that's sent asking you to enter password details or pay an invoice. And I think invoice fraud, for these smaller businesses, it's a huge risk.
So in a nutshell, though, the biggest concerns you think are going to be there for the next 5 years? Come here.
what are the
the biggest concerns over the next 5 years? What do you think they will be?
I think emerging technology, Internet
Yeah.
of Things, obviously continues. I think the big thing as well is the skills gap. The skills gap is absolutely huge in security, and
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a bit of a problem for everybody.
Anyone else, Tim?
I think it's how you secure humans in the organisation, in the enterprise.
Okay, we've got some questions that have come through from our NatWest Business and Telegraph Online. What are currently the biggest security threats facing SMEs?
I'd actually say I think it's handling personal data and probably invoice fraud that they'll be seeing.
And what are some of the ways that SMEs can keep their emails as secure as possible? Oh, hello, Tim,
We all
you're
know.
answering all this.
Well, I would obviously say, I think make sure that if you're sending personally identifiable information on email or sensitive data, just make sure that it's appropriate for the person that you're sending it to.
Okay,
But
keep
I'd also-
sending them in using the hashtag SpotlightSessions and more of that later. Plenty more business security advice on NatWest Business Hub, everything covering phishing, tackling fraud, surviving a cyber attack and more. We'll be here live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. until July 4th. So watch us on the NatWest Business Hub or the Telegraph Online as we talk about marketing, exporting, finance and HR with a variety of business experts. Watch us live or catch up online afterwards. Coming soon to the NatWest Business Hub are some inspiring short films where we've got business owners sharing peer-to-peer advice and their tips for business success. Recently, we visited Mahmood Chowdhury, CEO of Datrix, a company leading the way offering cloud storage. Being an expert in all things cybersecurity, we asked Mahmood what's the one thing he's learnt in business that he'd pass on.
As an IT organization, we also make sure we train all of our staff on cybersecurity. Use external consultants, don't train your staff by yourselves, and make sure everybody is trained.
So, Carmina, do you agree with Mahmood's business advice there?
Oh, totally agree. I think, many clients we work with, I think you constantly see top of the list is employee awareness, employee education. I think it's critical, to have everybody to understand, the threats out there and how they can help the company. So, I totally agree with what he's saying. It's really important.
You've spent years working in the cyber business security. What would be the tips that you'd be passing on?
I think, we've mentioned it before, but just have a clear plan, a security plan. Understand actually your security posture today. And sometimes I think it's also understanding your peers. I think people are worried to talk about security to their peers in other parts of the business. Collaborate, understand what they're going through, what they've put in place. I think that's really important.
So joining us, we've got Julie McArdle from NatWest Business Security. So Julie, come on, we love a really bad story to put the EBGBs up, people. You've seen a few, I would imagine. Tell me one of them.
Too many horror stories to recall,
Too many?
I think. Yeah, so,
really?
One that stands out in particular is an IT firm that we worked with who had very strong cybersecurity in place, but actually as a staff perk decided to turn it off over the lunch period. So between 12 and 2, turned off their cybersecurity and allowed staff to browse the web, check their emails and do whatever they wanted to. And somebody in their accounts team during this period had tried to get a screensaver for Britney Spears on his desktop and downloaded the image, but also, unbeknownst to him, financial malware as well. And when he logged into the online banking service a few days later, he was redirected to a copycat version of his bank's website and ultimately provided information that allowed for a payment of $2 million to be sent.
No.
Yeah. So in those sorts of circumstances, the bank will work really hard with that customer, and thankfully for that particular firm, it was a good outcome. We could recover the money that was sent. But the stress that is felt by the organisation and the individual as well is devastating, really.
So you've seen all of this and much of it. I mean, so what piece of advice would you be giving to a small or medium-sized business today?
I think there's a few things to think about. So there is no silver bullet. You need to recognise that. You need to recognise that you will be a target and you can fall victim. So have in place a cyber plan that takes into account not only protection and detection, but response and recovery plans as well. So if the worst does happen, you know how to recover it. And if you don't take each layer of that plan seriously as each other, then it will fail. So you need to protect, detect, respond.
Protect, detect and respond.
Yeah, and take each layer as seriously as the other.
And where do you start? Well, the first thing is protect, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So if you're a small business and you don't have resource available to put somebody in charge of security, then there's lots of great free resources that are available. So the National Cyber Security Centre is a great place to start.
And is that how you would assess the risk? Because I personally, even on my business, I own a business, I wouldn't know where to start. But I think one of the things you said is everybody needs to understand it really to an extent.
Yeah.
But how would you start assessing?
So 10 Steps to Cyber Security is a paper that's provided by National Cyber Security Centre. It's just a one-page document, very simple and easy to understand. That's a great place to start. Kieran was talking earlier about Cyber Essentials as well, the checklist you can do through the government portal. So they're great places to start. If you're a larger organisation, then yes, put in place a continuous education and awareness programme for your staff.
And is that what you do, Camino?
Accenture can do that, exactly that. Doing an assessment, understanding your security maturity today, and helping build a roadmap. It doesn't have to be this full-blown roadmap because obviously it's constantly changing, but just giving clients, that roadmap that you can start, sort of baby steps working along to work towards that roadmap. I think having an assessment done and then also looking at your third parties as well, as you said, it constantly spreads out, the thing with security. So I think it's just having an assessment really helps.
It's kind of being part of the culture, isn't it? That really is now part of our culture and the way we work.
It is. It's and again, I think even 18 months ago, people used to talk about it won't happen to me. And I think you can't open a paper or turn on television anymore without somebody talking about a cyber breach.
Well, we're seeing nearly 50% of them, aren't we?
Exactly.
You've been sending in your questions, Carmina and Julie. The viewers are depending on you. And we've got some more. So, how can leaders be sure to foster the right security culture? I guess that's what we've been talking about here. Okay, so you maybe just put it, say you're sitting in front of me, coming into businesses. How do we make sure that we are starting it from the top?
I think security should be at the heart of everything, so that everybody is on board and they know that. And I think, from senior leaders, board down, if they're taking it seriously, the message comes from the top, and I think that's really important. We used to talk about being a boardroom agenda item. It really is now.
And why is it that SMEs are a particular target for hackers and scammers?
Well, I mean,
that is a worry, isn't it? Like, these are the people who probably just are, finding it most painful to have to pay out what we talk about £25,000 on average. Why is it that hackers are going after them?
I think sometimes SMEs are focused on their brand and their marketing, and perhaps don't apply enough focus on their cybersecurity. And criminals are very aware of that as well. Also, you might be an SME that's part of a bigger supply chain, so you might be a target for a criminal because actually you supply into a bigger organisation, and that makes you vulnerable because of the connections that you have.
So plenty more business security advice, tips and insights available on the NatWest Business Hub. I've certainly learned a huge amount today, and thank you to all my guests. Thank you for being here. Meeting has been great. We're going to keep the conversation going next Wednesday on Spotlight Sessions. I'll have more guests and we'll be discussing marketing.